What's up, Rockers? It's Phil Lewis from LA Guns, and you're listening to the Thunder Underground. Turn it up!
Welcome to episode 376 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always. As you heard right there in that opening, Phil Lewis of LA Guns is back on the podcast. Very happy to be able to talk to Phil again about LA Guns' brand new album, Black Diamonds, that comes out this Friday. Phil Lewis was on here. Man, it's been over 4 years ago now. Half the existence of this podcast actually over half the existence of this podcast ago. Because we're coming up here in about a month on the 8th year anniversary of this podcast. Phil Lewis was on here with Tracy Guns at the very end. It was in December of 2018. And here we are in the springtime of 2023. That's just wild. How fast time flies. But so happy that Phil has made his way back here on the podcast. We're going to talk to him about this brand new album and all kinds of other stuff. So before we jump into that, I need to let you know who we're sponsored by. That would be DEB Concerts, concert promoter based right here in the Tulsa area, who has brought tons of great acts to our area here in downtown Tulsa. Bands like Saxon, Last in Line, LA Guns, Tom Kiefer, Buck Cherry, Lita Ford, even stuff to the arena down here at the BOK Center in Tulsa, like Lamb of God, Megadeth, Ice Cube, Snoop D-O-double-G, and so much more. DEB Concerts also books the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. This year, of course, is no exception. The lineup for Rocklahoma was announced a few weeks ago, and the DEB sponsored Roadhouse stage features 4 nights, 4 days of action, starting with the Thursday night pre-party, which takes place on the Roadhouse stage. That will be headlined by Warrant. A couple members of that band have been on this podcast before. The other 3 nights will be headlined by Buck Cherry. Josh Todd has been on this podcast before. Kicks, one of the greatest live bands you'll ever see. And every member of that band has been on this podcast. All at once, of course, but... And finally, Skid Row. No one from Skid Row has been on this podcast, unfortunately, but I'm guessing that will change one day. LA Guns will also be on that stage as well. Enough with saying who's been on this podcast. DEB Concerts on Twitter and Facebook is at DEB Concerts. Follow them on the socials so you don't miss any updates on upcoming stuff. We, of course, keep you updated here as well. And we appreciate DEB Concerts for everything they do. Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed. And they are mother approved. 25 plus years of experience from Jason Thompson. And you can see a collection of the Sunset Tattoo work on their socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. Tons of great styles that they specialize in. I've had tattoo work done by Jason Thompson. I love it. I know many other people that have as well. And I'm sure I will again here in the near future. And hopefully you will too. So if you give Sunset Tattoo a call or a message, you can set up a time to go in there, sit down and talk about what work you're looking to have done. They also accept walk-ins. So drop by Sunset Tattoo and tell them you heard about them on Thunder Underground. Finally, we've got Med Farm, a dispensary located in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 24683 East Highway 51. They're right off the highway, right past Oneida Road. Can't miss them. They've got a drive-thru, which is a great convenient thing that many dispensaries don't have. If you call or text your order ahead of time, you can zip right through that drive-thru and be on your way. You can also check out their large selection at leafly.com. You can go in anytime and talk to one of their many knowledgeable staff. They are cannabis with a cause. That means 30% of their proceeds are going to build no-kill animal shelters. Such an amazing cause. Nearly a third of their proceeds at all times are going to help out animals and build no-kill animal shelters. Also, follow them on our socials. MedFarm, that's PHARM on Facebook. MedFarm OK on Instagram. The website is medfarmok.com. And if you mention Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order. You can't beat that. So drop by MedFarm and tell them you heard about them on Thunder Underground. All right. I'm going to talk to Phil Lewis here, who is the vocalist of LA Guns. The original vocalist, and I'm glad he's back now. He's been back now for over 6 years. I believe it was mid-2017, if I remember right. Could have been 2016, but I think it was sometime in 2017 when he returned and joined back up with Tracy Guns. And as he kind of mentions here in the podcast, in this interview, when I brought up, working with Johnny Martin and Ace Von Johnson, he talked about it. He's like, well, I actually joined Johnny's band, which I thought was a cool way to put it because Johnny was already in LA Guns with Tracy Guns at that point, whenever Phil came back. But it's the way it should be, as we know. Tracy Guns is a phenomenal, virtuoso, amazing guitarist that everybody knows that, but I still feel he doesn't get the high praise that he deserves whenever you hear people talking about amazing guitarists, because he does it in the way, he's not a blues guitarist, but he does it in the way a guy like that does it, where it's kind of sometimes understated, where it's not your virtuoso kind of, shredding, and he's done that stuff as well, but it's just more of a melodic based kind of sense, where it's just, the point is here, Phil Lewis is back, and Phil Lewis's voice and Tracy Gunn's guitar and their writing together just kind of goes together, obviously, and it needs to be together. And they're now back, and they've released, this will be the 4th studio album they've released since Phil's came back 6 years ago or less, which is just amazing in this day and age, especially for a band from that era, or a band that's at least, well over 35 years old, for a band that the majority of bands from that time period, or even older, or even bands from that debut in the 90s or whatever, a lot of them rely on nostalgia, which is fine. You earned that right. You came out, you had some hits, had a few albums. 20, 30 years later, why not go out there and just reap the benefit of that and play great shows with the hits to people? And that's what LA Guns does, but they also throw in the new stuff. And I mean, the output of 4 albums over the span of 6 years from any artist is amazing. But for a band like that, I said, to do that, I think it's just great. And the fact that they're doing it, and it's not just whipping shit out for no reason, kind of like I talked about with Revolution Saints last week, they're putting out albums and they're quality. You're getting all killer, no filler. And this new album is no exception, and it's got a lot more diversity kind of in the styles throughout it than the recent LA Guns albums, or even old ones, I think. It's several songs that me and Phil talk about here coming up. They've already released a few singles that you can check out if you haven't heard them, here before the album drops this Friday. One of the singles is the ballad that they released a video for called Diamonds. You need to check this out because it's an all-time, I'm just going to say it right here, I think it's an all-time great LA Guns song. I'm talking, if you told me make a top 10, maybe even a top 5, but definitely a top 10 all-time in my opinion. I think my favorite LA Guns song of all time is Over the Edge, and I've always appreciated not just ballads, those mid-tempo, the more kind of, there's more passion from some artists just when you hear it, kind of, I've spoke about that many times, and I think Zakk Wylde is, when it comes to Black Label or just any of his work, when Zakk Wylde does a ballad or does a slower song with piano work and his guitar, that's when he shines the brightest. Even though most people, you think of Zakk, you think of shredding, you think of the stuff with Ozzy, you think of all the heavy Black Label stuff. But to me, it's like the Book of Shadows stuff. Both of those, Pride and Glory, all the BLS ballads. That's where he shines, and I don't want to, say that LA Guns just shines there. They shine all over the place. I mean, they wouldn't still be here 35 years later if they weren't. But just, to my ears, I love stuff like, the ballads, because you really get to hear the beauty of Phil's voice. With the heavier stuff you do as well, but it's just, there's just something, to that to me. And, the solo for Diamonds from Tracy is kind of like I talked about earlier. It's just one of those great kind of brooding melodic solos that personally I freaking love. So anyway, there's so much great stuff on here. Phil talks about it. He talks about who wrote a lot of these songs and how they came together. All kinds of great stuff. So let's jump into it. Here's Phil Lewis of LA Guns. 3 singles out so far. How would you describe this album as a whole to a listener?
Comes out April 17th. It's a good fucking record. It was it's a very varied record. It's metal, it's power pop, it's gut-wrenching, unapologetic 80s ballad we threw in there, and just it makes for an interesting record. I mean, it certainly is a lot more fun to do something that varied than it is to do something more one-dimensional. Yeah, I mean, and for me personally, when I hear it, I can hear how live it is, and just the there was chemistry, a lot of chemistry on recording this, and you normally, that goes without saying, but the record that we did before, it was called Checkered Past. That was during the pandemic, and we recorded a whole album without being in a room with each other once. It was all recorded at home at File Exchange and layered, and then send it back and compiled. And under the circumstances, it sounded all right. I mean, not bad, but a little bloodless, perhaps. I don't know. But this one was just the total opposite. We'd all got together. It was post-pandemic. We all had great, ideas. There was a lot of energy. We were so happy to get out and back on the road, and so much so that we were actually recording on our tour bus on days off, or if we had a bit of time, and that was just something we hadn't done such a long time, and it's great. I felt like I was in a young band again. There was a hunger to it, and as I say, just the complete opposite of sitting at home on your laptop, an interface for the record before that. So for me, this has got a much better vibe. But there's some melancholic moments on it too. As I said, it's not just one dimension. There's all kinds of stuff it's all over the place. I can't put a finger on us. You really can't, right. and I don't want people to. I want to be that way, and to put something really, really heavy, like the opening track, You Betray, and then mid-album, something like Crying, which sounds like Cheap Trick meets Enough, and it's kind of like that Donny V, Beatlesy vibe. And yeah, just to prove, yeah, we can do that too.
Yeah, Crying is actually one of the songs I wanted to bring up because that sounded like something you wrote. It sounds like your influence is more on it than the other guys. Am I right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful. It's a great song, isn't it? Just a simple 3 minute, just like yeah, just verse, chorus, and just up. But actually, credit goes to Johnny Martin for
Okay.
bringing that one. It's he brought a couple in, and as did Ace Von Johnson. So it's democratic. I mean, Tracy's like the main guy, you know, he's the nucleus of it, but he's by no means like a dictator. He's just like, if you got a good song's a good song. He's got plenty, but he's always up for other people's, well, other band members anyway.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so everyone's happy on it. You know, if it's a happy record, even
So,
though it's got quite dark moments.
right. Yeah, one of the other songs I wanted to mention was Gonna Lose because that, I mean, you
Yeah.
always hear some kind of, you could hear some Jimmy Page coming from Tracy throughout the years, but you don't hear Robert Plant coming from you. But in the chorus of that song, it sounds like you're both channeling some Led Zeppelin. Am I right? And is that an intentional kind of homage type thing, or
Big time,
okay?
absolutely. No, I'll be honest. You know, I didn't think I could do that. You know, that is when I, you know, first when that was being put together, and that was like the direction the course was going in, and I was like, I don't know, I don't, you know, that is so incredibly high, and I recorded my vocals with Mitch Davis, who collaborates with us in the writing as well. And I'd been in the studio. It was like a Thursday, and I've been in there all day. And we'd been working on two or three. I think we were like Crying, and we'd done Diamonds as well. So I was a bit burnt, a bit tired. But I said, well, just let. He said, you know, let's just have a listen to it before the end of the day and see what we're dealing with. So that came up, and yeah, I could sing the verse. All right, it was okay. And then that chorus came, and I couldn't get anywhere fucking near it. I mean, it was just like it may as well been a dog whistle. It was, and I was like, oh shit, you know, what are we gonna do? Should we gonna rewrite the part? You know, we'll write something so it's a bit lower, more of a Rod Stewart kind of a thing. You know, it wasn't the end of the world, but I just said, look, let me just sleep on it. Like I just think about it for the night, and we'll have a stab at it first thing tomorrow, the following day, the Friday. I went in and I nailed it. I nailed it, and it wasn't, you know, by no means first take. There was, you know, it took a while to compile a really, really good version. So I'm honestly reluctant to ever do that song live. But you know, muscle memory. You know, you do it a few times. Maybe I could do it, but I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of Mitch for coaching me through that. And yeah, it is a mad because Tracy's always been Jimmy Page, but I was always Rod Stewart. You know, never really that Pagey thing. And so for me to actually uh, ascend to those heights, I felt good about.
Yeah, especially this long into your career, you know, it's impressive. And
He's been incredibly complimentary about my work on the record, and you know, we're both simultaneously doing interviews and just you know raving about how happy we are doing what we do and being in LA Guns.
well, you mentioned Ace and Johnny, like how it's been, you know, what, a few albums now that you guys have done since you got back together with Tracy. Like,
Yeah.
talk about them too and what they've kind of brought to the band.
Well,
To
yeah. I'll talk about Johnny Martin first. And technically, I joined Johnny's band when I agreed to do the reunion. Johnny and Tracy had been working on projects together, and he was already in Tracy's band, and I could see why, because he's just such a phenomenal bass player, and all round good egg. He's a good guy, officer material. Just it was great for Tracy to have somebody like Johnny on board, who's is very inspiring, you know, because it just is energy, tremendous energy. He's really talented, but he's never down. He's never dull. He's never like, oh, let's just do this. It's always on 10, and that's great to be around. And that's very much his writing style. You know, he's bright, he's poppy. It's not too serious, and I think it very very much comes across in his music. So yeah, I've just ultimate respect for Johnny Martin. And for Ace, I always wanted Ace in the band, and I had to wait a while because he was doing stuff. He was involved with another project, and the time just wasn't right. And then the planets lined up, and we got him. I was so happy that day. He brings in a real cool street punk rock element to it. A bit thrashier. You know, Tracy's become such a virtuoso. I remember Tracy being thrashy like Ace in the early days. So it's good to have like the master and the disciple, you know, in the guitar department. And yeah, it's. I know Ace is happy with it. It's definitely got to be a challenge for him. I wouldn't dream of picking up a guitar next to Tracy Comes. You kidding? No way. I mean, acoustic, yeah, we'll play acoustics together, but no, in terms of like jamming electric, no way. I'll pass on that. But yeah, and his stuff is as I said, punky, but you know, he's got that. His one of his earlier influences, he likes that Thin Lizzy. He's got that shuffly thing going with the twin guitars, and he brought in Like a Drug, which is very Thin Lizzy-ish, isn't it? And yeah, just a great solid power rock song. So yeah, they've got some great ideas, and they're all very different, and we all focus equally as intently on each song, and then before you know it, it becomes a band, it becomes an album. A lot of bands, they'll just record a song here and there, but we've got that 70s sensibility of making a record, not going in the studio, but embarking on a project, and seeing it through with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we think in terms of that's a good second song, that's a good one before the beat, the second side. You know, like we always think in 12-inch vinyl, and if that's got something to do with our vibe, then I make no apologies for that.
Speaking on that, you guys have put out, this will be what, your fourth album since you've returned?
Yeah.
That's I mean, a lot of output in the past 7 years. Like, not many bands do that, even young bands. So like, kind of talk about the idea behind putting out so much output this late in your career.
Yeah, sure. I've got to say that one of the things that appealed to me most in the reunion, about the reunion, was how much stuff Johnny and Tracy had ready to go, new material, and it was really good to get stuck into it. That first, the missing piece, and then when we got around to doing The Devil, the chemistry was really, really there. Tracy's a prolific writer. Whether we've got an album to do or not, he's writing songs. He's sitting at home, he's playing guitar, he's on the tour bus, working stuff out, writing for other people. And he's just in something of a he's explosive. He's got he's so many great ideas. It's just like we may as well. It's a challenge, but it's fun. It's not difficult. You know, and when it ends up sounding as good as this, it's totally worth it. We know
Right.
it's not going to sell millions of copies. It's not the point. That's not why we're doing it.
Well, speaking on him writing, and like you mentioned, Ace and Johnny, and you writing, like outside of the checkered past, have you guys always kind of got together to make songs fully formed, or how do you guys handle that writing process?
It depends, you know, it's always music first. It's never like, oh, I've got this great poem that I need to set to music. It's
Okay.
always like, you know, this is the vibe of you know the music, and it just it's our job to create a lyric that is consistent with the vibe of that music. That's it. That's essentially it, you know. And it's really not about anything personal, you know. If it was, it'd just be like writing songs about me going to get dog food at Trader Joe's. Um, it's I live a very dull when I'm not on the road. It's pretty mundane suburban life. So yeah, no, we can't write about that. That's for sure. It'd be like sounding like Morrissey. It's you know just getting into a fictional place.
So you never have ideas come to you like lyric wise, jot them down and save it for later. It's always kind of like you hear the music and then go from that point on.
You know, there's some you know clever phrasing and stuff
Hmm.
that I might think of, or you know, a couple of like you know syncopations and words that rhyme together that I might use down the line. But yeah, no, it's always music first.
You kind of like we spoke a minute ago on Gonna Lose. From my standpoint, you haven't really lost anything in your voice, you know, from back in the 80s. Like,
Oh,
what have you?
yeah, I could never have done that in the '80s. Honestly, I don't believe I could, you know, and I'm still kind of amazed that I did. You know, there's no auto tune on that. That is what you hear. That was me, and it wasn't the first take. I'll be honest, but you know, I did it, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, I, you know, I wanted to be a rock. For I never set out to be a musician. I wanted to be a rock star. Damn it, you know. I saw Alice Cooper doing Schools Out. I was an avid soccer player before, you know, football was my life in London. And I came home from practice one evening, 7 o'clock, Top of the Pops was on, and Alice Cooper's doing Schools Out. I dropped to my knees, didn't I? And I just like never played, so I never kicked a ball again in my life after. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then the question was like learning how to do it and self teaching. There, you know, like there aren't rock star tutors. You know, you just kind of got to get your influences from other people. And you know, Alice, of course, is my biggest. And I always make a point of telling him, you know, because he did. He ruined me. He changed my life.
Yeah, you can obviously hear Alice Cooper in your voice at times. But like, what?
It was those songs, you know, like the Killers record, the Killers and the Schools Out, you know, those because you know I couldn't sing along with Yes records, you know, that was way too lofty, but or even Robert Plant, you know, it was too fucking high. But Alice, like we could sing that stuff all day, and that's a big part of his appeal. I think is people, you know, and anyone can sing it, and he just it's he's great, and I love him for it, and I love his. You can hear his huge Jim Morrison influence in Alice's voice,
Yeah,
and a bit croony sometimes. He's a bit of a crooner, as was Jim, as was Morrison, quite croony. You know, it was the '60s. That was still, you know, there was a lot of that sort of Sinatra vibe in the air, the Pat Boone vibe, and you know that they were rockers, but You know, I think it influenced them on a jazz level. The Doors, I mean. Anyway, I'm meandering.
No, it's great. Like, what do you? I mean, what have you done to like maintain your voice throughout recent years? Do you have anything you do on a daily basis, or?
Yeah, you know, I on a gig, I'll do a 15-20 minute warm up before each gig or before each session, to loosen everything up. It's not difficult. It sounds like mules mating. It's not a nice sound, but it's just a technique that I learned from the hard way, when we were first out. You know, when we hit the jackpot and we were out on tour for basically indefinitely. If I lost my voice, the ship went down, and there were times when it was down, and because I had no voice, and there were a few people out there, that were expert, and one of the guys was called Don Lawrence. He was a vocal coach, and he trained Bon Jovi, who brought in Sebastian Bach, who I did some stuff with Don in New York, but I never had a tape of my session with him. And recently, Sebastian just gave me his tape, and it's absolutely. And yeah, if as a singer you have to do that. You know, I say that, you know, because I'm such a disciple of it. And then you'll get somebody like Robin Zander, who does nothing. He smokes a cigarette and then goes up and sings The Flame.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But no, all the singers I know, Sebastian, Robert Mason, we all lock ourselves away an hour or so before the gig, and make these strange guttural noises.
I mean, I know one of your idols is Rod Stewart, and what you got Steve Marriott and Paul
Yeah,
Rogers and all these kind of guys. Like,
yeah.
I know Rod Stewart put out music, you know, in the past couple of years, but with most of your idols, obviously aren't putting out new music. What do you get inspiration from these days? Do you still go back to that old stuff, or?
Oh, big time, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a fantastic vinyl collection, and the majority of it is from the '70s, and that Faces stuff is on a lot, on the turntable a lot. The Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart, collaborations, are still incredibly inspiring for me. And yeah, new stuff. Oh God, I wish I was a bit hipper to it, but it's really, nothing that is like, you know, it doesn't count because it's completely different. But you know, like in terms of like a rock band, it's like Rammstein is the only band that I can think of, or this Ghost, that have been of any remote interest, I suppose. And that's circus, you know. So I don't know. Tell me a good band that I would like, you know, the a good new band.
Rival Sons, have you heard them?
Rival Sons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with them.
And
um
Dirty
yeah,
Honey is another.
Struts, of course, over in
Yeah.
England, and the Darkness, and but yeah, I wouldn't want to be a new band now.
Yeah.
It's tough. Simon Cowell fucked everything up.
Right. Yeah, there's so much I mean, especially today with technology and the way music's shared, it's like I could record a song in 30 seconds and throw it on the internet and it's there. So you don't really have stuff just gets lost in a shovel if it's good, you know?
I tell you, I let you in on a secret. We spent more money on catering, recording Cocked and Loaded, than all four post reunion records recorded together.
No shit.
Expensive. Yeah, we spent more on Lobster, on Cocked and Loaded, than we did recording these last four records. Well, because it's easy. See, I mean, you can just do it on a laptop and an interface. back then we had 4 studios going on at once at $300 an hour.
Yeah.
And it was insane. But it was just a different game. The money was insane. How much money we were wasting, and it wasn't even considered wasting. It was all part of the machinery, and the sales matched that kind of money. Now, of course, the sales are long gone, and so's that money. It was a fun ride. Make no mistake, I enjoyed it, but it got to the point where we were just getting so heavily manipulated by suits that it took a lot of fun out of it. And if you can see some of the photo shoots from that time, going into Hollywood Vampires, and it took a toll on the vibe of the band. So at the end of the day, when it did go tits up, when the bubble did burst, and I honestly, there was a moment, I think it needed to. I'm talking about, the 80s, whatever, hair bubble, the sleeves, whatever you want to call it, the fun, when the fun popped. It was sad, and it was like, oh shit. It was very scary, because all of a sudden, there was no infrastructure. The money was all gone pretty much overnight. But in many other ways, it was liberating, because of the immense pressure that we were under to be Bon Jovi. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I was like, like that was, because that was the label we were on. We were on Polygram. So it be like Poison, be like Bon Jovi, be like Cinderella. So can we be like LA Guns?
Kind of goes into one of my questions, is that last time I talked to you, it's been quite a while. It was between The Missing Piece and the Devil You Know albums.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that making music was a lot funner now because you have control. So has it continued that way with Frontiers? Yeah. Frontiers hasn't stepped in any way. It's complete.
No, not at all. They leave us to it. They have a relationship with Tracy that they've had for a while, even before I did the reunion. So I just pretty much leave it to them to sort out. I don't actually even think I'm in the contract, to be honest with you. But it don't matter. I'm not going anywhere. It's just a formality. But I know how much we're getting per record, and it ain't much, and I'm not getting ripped off. It's just being very fair. Everyone's getting what they deserve. So yeah, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he's already started work on the next one, number 5.
Wow.
Do you believe that? He's already like 2 or 3 songs into it. That's just the way he rolls,
So that's probably something we can expect next year already in 2024?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we won't have it recorded this year, but it'll definitely be written.
Yeah. The past 6-7 years, everything's been like a stronger brotherhood probably than it was like at the end of the last run, and your guys are happy, everything's working out great and all that.
I think so. It was our estrangement of 15 years in hindsight was ridiculous. That really was, and as soon as we got back together and the creative juices started flowing, it was just like, wow, we should have done this a long time ago. So we're very careful to respect each other's boundaries, and because we don't want to, the last thing we want is to fall out again, and so we haven't come anywhere near close to that, which doesn't mean that we haven't been upfront and honest with each other, because I think that's an essential part of the bond between us. I'm straight with him, and likewise him with me too. So if we're in that position and we don't have to have a roadie as a go-between, tell Tracy I want him to turn his amp down. There's a lot of that in the business. And Phil says, turn your amp down, and tell Phil to fuck off. He'll tell me off directly. So yeah, we got that, and I cherish it.
I've had the chance to see you guys since you came back a few times, but I've never had the chance to see you do your acoustic solo kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
when you sit down and do that, like, we know how great Tracy Guns is. Do you just kind of rework the songs to your ability, or like, I mean, it's acoustic, so it's a lot different anyway, but how do you approach those guitar parts?
Yeah, nothing remotely like my vibe is completely different. I'm a busker.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all chords. They might have a little riff here and there, but for them, I strip it right down to the way it was written, recorded, before it was recorded. And it's not just things like ballad or jazz. I do rip and tear acoustic.
Okay.
And it works. It works good. It's kind of a blues progression. I've always been. It's easy for me to play. It's easy to sing and to play and sing together. So yeah, I mean but if it comes down to that, if I can play it and I can sing it, I can do it, and I can put together like an hour, 90 minutes of various songs, my own and band songs and a couple of covers. And if there's an interest in it, I'll do it, and I enjoy doing it. It's just the challenges that I don't really want to go out as a solo acoustic, because I'll end up. I did it. I did a show in Kentucky, and they had me on between two metal bands. It was a Saturday night, and it was like death metal before me, and then I had to do my acoustic set, and everyone's deaf, everyone's drunk. I'm trying to sensitive crystallize up there, and then the metal band on after me, and it was like no. So I need to. It needs to be a little bit more thought out, but I'd love to do it, and I enjoy doing it, and people seem to like it. But yeah, it's nothing like Tracy. I wish I could get Tracy to do it with me, but he won't pick up an acoustic guitar. He's just like, it's against religion.
Well, are there any of the tracks on the new album Black Diamonds that you think would work well in your acoustic set, like maybe Diamonds? Or
yeah, I can do Diamonds. I can do Not Park. That's not going to be a problem. Yeah. Right. Oh, and the last one was the couple on the other ones. I've got a acoustic guitar ready to go at any time if it's called for. But it's so far so good. Actually, Tracy played acoustic guitar at the beginning of Diamonds in the video. I was kind of surprised that he did. But yeah, he's a big snob in that way. He's like, oh, I'm not playing acoustic.
What's the relation between the title being Black Diamonds and the song being just called Diamonds?
And there's no connection. The title is just another derivative of the little gameplay between Tracy and I, like The Missing Piece, The Devil You Know. That's me and him. Checkered Park, that's right. Me and Black Diamonds. That's me and him. That's what we are. So yeah, the song. I mean, the song came after the title, so it may have subconsciously influenced it, but it's not. For a while, the album was going to be called Shattered Glass, and I'm glad it wasn't, because Black Diamond's better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you guys have this West Coast tour coming up here in April. Can we expect like a full-on touring the rest of the year, or what's the plans for LA Guns?
As you say, there's going to be some local dates, California dates. I'm seeing some stuff East Coast in June. Nothing like last year's trench warfare across the eastern provinces. It was like, Jesus Christ. I saw on the itinerary last year that it was June and July. I didn't realize it was all of it. And then it was then some, and it was halfway through August. And I haven't toured like that since my 30s, like being out on tour for like 8-9 weeks. Yeah, it was definitely had its challenges, but no, nothing like that. It'll be, like maybe a couple of weeks, like northeast, and then a couple of weeks down south. But nothing anywhere as extensive as last year.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, I'm absolutely loving the new album, and I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
I really enjoyed talking to you, mate. Thank you. I appreciate the support, and thanks for taking the time out and listening to it and knowing enough about it to have a good conversation. Appreciate it. Come see us anytime.
There you go, Phil Lewis of LA Guns. A huge thank you to John Freeman of Freeman Promotions for his continued support of this podcast, and a massive thank you to Phil Lewis for returning to the podcast, hitting me up on Zoom, talking there for 30 minutes or 30 plus, actually, I think it was, about the brand new album Black Diamonds that comes out this Friday. No, there's not a cover of Kiss's Black Diamond, but I love the fact that Phil mentioned that this album and the previous 3 studio albums they've done since his return to the band, all the titles revolve around him and Tracy, in their reformation and their, rekindled professional relationship and personal relationship, which I thought was cool. So really looking forward to everybody hearing this album here very soon. Like I said earlier, you can already hear, I believe it's 3 songs, maybe 4. I think it's 3. So check those out. Look forward to this album coming out here very shortly. In the meantime, if this is your first time listening, I appreciate you finding this podcast. If you've listened randomly and you haven't listened to a lot of stuff, there's 375 episodes before this one you can check out. Last week was Dean Castronovo, the drummer for Journey, Revolution Saints, Bad English, Ozzy for a bit, so much more that I could keep rambling about. Greg Upchurch from 3 Doors Down was on here recently. Millie, the vocalist of Steelheart, was on here earlier this year. Speaking of that vein of rock and roll, from that era of rock with LA Guns and Steelheart, you've also had on Mark Kendall of Great White twice, Frank Hannon of Tesla 4 times, Brian Wheat of Tesla, Robert Mason and Joey Allen, both of Warrant, have been on here separately. Members of Firehouse, Trickster, Kix, Lillian Axe, Junkyard. Mark Slaughter has been on here. Michael Monroe, of course, of Michael Monroe's solo work fame, and the mighty Hanoi Rocks was on here last year. Glenn Hughes of the Dead Daisies and Deep Purple and the Black Country Communion has been on here. One of the highlights of my life talking to that man. Gene Simmons of Kiss. Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss. I know that I'm forgetting a million things when it comes to that era of rock and roll, but we've also had on heavy stuff like Prong and Helmet and White Zombie and Typo Negative and the Black Dahlia Murder, Killswitch Engage, Testament, Superjoint, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, Jeff Tate of Queensryche. There's a couple more for you from that era. But yeah, so much cool stuff throughout the years, and I assume so much cool stuff in the future. Like I mentioned earlier, we're coming up here a month away from the 8-year anniversary, so whatever's to come, hopefully it's cool. But I tell you what is to come is next week, which I know is cool, is going to be a tribute to Gary Rossington of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Of course, he passed away a little over a month ago, unfortunately. So Jason is returning to the podcast to talk about Gary Rossington with me. We'll go into a bit of Lynyrd Skynyrd talk and our love for Skynyrd, and of course, the impact that Gary had with his amazing guitar playing. But yeah, look forward to that one coming up. Dig back through all this old stuff. Hit up the website, thethunderunderground.com. You can find all the socials there, so click on all of them and follow or like. You can also listen to the podcast directly there on the player, or you can listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard. Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Mixcloud. The list is long. Google it. whatever you need to do. Wherever you're listening right now, just like or subscribe or follow so you don't miss future episodes when they drop. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to Freeman Promotions, Phil Lewis of LA Guns, DEB Concerts, Med Farm, and Sunset Tattoo. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.